Good evening. We need to address a deeply troubling incident that has shaken communities in Borno State and raised serious questions about military operations in Nigeria's troubled northeast. The Nigerian Air Force stands accused of conducting an airstrike that resulted in civilian casualties, and the details emerging from this tragedy demand our attention and careful examination. Reports indicate that a military airstrike intended to target suspected terrorist positions in Borno State has instead claimed the lives of innocent civilians. The incident occurred in an area that has long been caught in the crossfire of Nigeria's fight against insurgency, where communities have suffered under the threat of Boko Haram and its offshoots for over a decade. What makes this situation particularly heartbreaking is that these were people who had already endured so much, living in constant fear of terrorist attacks, only to become victims of the very forces meant to protect them. The Nigerian Air Force has been conducting regular operations in the northeast as part of the ongoing counterinsurgency efforts. These operations typically involve aerial surveillance and targeted strikes against identified terrorist camps and hideouts. However, when such operations go wrong, the consequences are devastating. Witnesses from the affected area describe scenes of chaos and confusion as the airstrike hit, with families scrambling for safety and community members rushing to help the wounded. The term used in the headline, referring to pellets, suggests the type of ammunition or ordnance used in the strike, which scattered across the impact zone, causing widespread casualties among people who are simply going about their daily lives. This is not the first time such an incident has occurred in Nigeria's counterinsurgency operations. Over the years, there have been multiple reports of airstrikes hitting civilian targets, including a particularly tragic incident in Kaduna State where a religious gathering was struck, and another in Yobe State that affected a village. Each time, the military has typically issued statements expressing regret and promising investigations, but affected communities continue to bear the scars of these errors. The pattern raises uncomfortable questions about intelligence gathering, target verification procedures, and the rules of engagement that guide these military operations. The challenge facing the Nigerian military is undeniably complex. Terrorist groups operating in the northeast have shown themselves to be adaptive, often hiding among civilian populations or using tactics that make clear identification difficult. They move through communities, sometimes by force, and sometimes taking advantage of the difficult terrain that characterizes much of Borno State. For military planners, this creates a genuine dilemma about how to effectively combat these threats while minimizing harm to innocent people. However, complexity cannot excuse the loss of civilian lives, and each incident erodes the trust between communities and the security forces meant to serve them. If you are finding this information important and you want to stay updated on crucial stories affecting our nation, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of events that matter to you and your community. The impact of incidents like this extends far beyond the immediate casualties. In communities already traumatized by years of insurgency, such events can deepen grievances and potentially drive recruitment for the very groups the military is fighting against. When people lose family members to what they perceive as reckless military action, the narrative of the government as protector becomes much harder to sustain. This psychological and social damage can take generations to heal, and it complicates the broader efforts to bring peace and stability to the region. International humanitarian law is very clear about the protection of civilians in conflict zones. The principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution require that military forces take all feasible measures to verify that targets are legitimate military objectives and to minimize harm to civilians. When airstrikes hit civilian areas, questions naturally arise about whether these principles were properly observed. Was the intelligence reliable? Were alternative methods of engagement considered? Was there adequate surveillance to confirm the presence of legitimate targets and the absence of civilians? These are questions that demand transparent answers. The Nigerian government and military leadership must address this incident with full transparency and accountability. Affected families deserve more than condolences. They deserve answers, acknowledgement, and compensation for their losses. The military needs to conduct a thorough investigation that is made public, identifying what went wrong in the chain of command and what measures will be implemented to prevent similar tragedies. Without accountability, these incidents will continue to occur and the cycle of violence and mistrust will only deepen. Looking at this situation, we must also consider what it means for the broader strategy in the Northeast. Military force alone has not solved the insurgency problem after more than a decade of intense operations. Perhaps this tragedy should prompt a serious reevaluation of tactics with greater emphasis on intelligence gathering, community engagement, and precision in operations. Technology exists that could improve target identification and reduce civilian casualties, but it requires investment and training. The question is whether there is the political will to make these changes or whether we will simply move from one tragedy to another with little learned from each mistake. For those of us watching from other parts of the country, it is easy to feel distant from these events, but we must remember that these are our fellow citizens, our brothers and sisters who deserve to live without fear from any quarter. Their struggles should matter to all of us because a nation is only as strong as its commitment to protecting all its people. This story is not just about one airstrike, it is about the value we place on human life and the standards we hold our institutions to when they wield the power of life and death.